TGIF, and thank goodness we've got a fresh edition of ESPN FC coming your way.
I was like, where are you going with this?
Thank goodness it's Friday.
Yeah, I know, but I had to think about it.
You had to think about it.
It's kind of where I am at the moment.
It's Friday. It is Friday. It is Friday.
It is Friday.
I'm not used to that.
You're not used to Friday?
Oh, well, you know that.
Abbreviations. Having to think. He's not used to thinking.
The little guy the little guy that normally hosts.
He's not
the
used
show.
to thinking. Oh, Craig.
Oh, anyways, we're back in studio. Alexis Nunes, Shaka Hislop, Craig Burley as well. Julien Laruens is joining us as well from Switzerland. But can I just say, it is a great Friday to be Manchester United.
Is it?
It is indeed, because the Red Devils have got their man. Bryan Mbeumo is heading to Old Trafford after agreeing a deal worth over $95 million. Now, word is he could undergo a medical before Manchester United fly to the US on Tuesday ahead of their pre-season tour. All right, Craig, let's come to you first since you're excited this Friday.
I mean, apparently they're dancing in the streets.
Made us Friday.
Craig could not wait to talk about this and how Brentford players and Wolves players will be saving Manchester United next season.
Well,
Craig,
apparently there's a party.
Do you like this deal?
There's a party in Sir Bobby Charlton Way as we speak, such as the heady heights that United are fishing in these days. They're bringing players in. They're having to pill for the Brentfords and the Wolves, for Cunha and Mbeumo. It's kind of where they are, isn't it? I was talking to the producer earlier about it. You know, gone are the days of Van Nistelrooy, Van Persie, and Eric Cantona before that, and all these players that they would bring in that everybody else wanted. That being said, the two players they have brought in Cunha from Wolves, he's a good player, but he was let go by Atletico Madrid. He can be inconsistent, but he's a good player. He's better than what they have, and so is Bryan Mbeumo. Now, he had a good partnership with Wissa up front at times at Brentford, but it has been crystal clear that they have struggled in the forward line. However, my issue is, and it's not, I suppose it's building blocks. My issue is what are United trying to achieve? Because the players that they're looking to sign are not, maybe they'll say, well, this is part of a process, part of a stepping stone to the next stage. But when you look at the type of players that the other big clubs, the teams that United should be gauging themselves again. I know they've had their struggles. I know last year was a disaster in the league performances. But they're gauging themselves not against, Tottenham and not against Wolverhampton and not against some of these other clubs like West Ham. They're gauging themselves against Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, City, probably Aston Villa at the moment, Newcastle. And you have to ask the question, the players that they're going for, are they going to take them even close to that level? And I think the answer for me is it'll improve them, but it's a clear no in terms of getting anywhere near to the bigger boys.
To that point, they should be gauging themselves against Liverpool and Manchester City and Arsenal. I personally don't think Manchester United are anymore. And while Manchester as a club may say differently, Manchester United fans may feel differently, we are still talking about a team that finished 14th in the league last season, I think I'm right in saying, and are buying players in that department, while spending a bit more than most clubs who finished 14th in the Premier League would. This is, to Craig's point, Cunha and Mbeumo are improvements on what they have, but are not the players that I think that pushes them in competing or having conversations with the Arsenals and the Liverpools. But it hopefully takes them above the Spurs and the West Hams and everybody else, the Brightons, and maybe they are having those conversations with those bigger clubs in a couple of years. But I still think, regardless, Manchester United are 2 or 3 seasons away from being back and even having considerations around top 4.
All right, Jules, let's go to you now as well, because there's been some chit-chat about the price, £71 million. We know that negotiations have been drawn out for weeks now, but how much more did United have to overpay in this?
I mean, I don't know if they've overpaid for Bryan Mbeumo, but that was the price that Brentford set from the beginning. I mean, Mbeumo cleared his locker at the training ground a month ago almost. He was never going to go back. I just don't know why it took so long to United to get this deal sorted when they knew this was the price. If they wanted him, they had to pay that. It's 65 million plus 6 in bonuses. And they kept offering 60 and then 62 and then 65, but less bonuses. And I'm like, just give the money. If that's who you want, just pay that money, because Brentford and Matthew Benham, their owner, friends of the show, obviously, who watches our show, they was never going to budge anyway. So they wanted him for preseason. He would go with them on preseason. So I guess maybe they didn't see any urgency before that. As long as he was there to go to the US, that was fine. It's a lot of money, of course. It's a lot of money for a player that has only played in the French second division, and for Brentford, both in the Championship and in the Premier League, obviously. But he's also a player that was one of the stars of the Premier League last season, both for goals and assists. Outstanding performances, outstanding for him last season in the Premier League. And that's why you pay that. And you also pay always a little bit more when it's an English club to an English club transfer. We know that.
And just interestingly enough, Jules, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, is this kind of deal along with Cunha something that's been agreed with Ruben Amorim, or is this United going out and recruiting players and telling the manager, this is who you have to work with?
No, they've both been validated by the managers, and really driving by the manager. Because again, you can look at the other side and think, for this amount of money, so we're talking £130 million, that's a lot of money for two players. And Cunha might be great and Mbeumo might be great. One of them might be great. Both of them might be okay, average, maybe a bit disappointing. We don't know. We will find out in the season. But you could also, from a Manchester United point of view, and even a fan's point of view, thinking, with all that money, could we not have gone for maybe players a bit younger, maybe players a bit better, maybe different positions? Because we know the main position is a number 9, and we talk about the number 9, and they search for number 9, because this is the priority for them. And we will see with the 11 that we put together for what they have in the squad currently, the big piece missing is that number 9, because that will shape everything else, where Bruno plays, where Mbeumo plays, where Cunha plays, all of that. But it's still a lot of money for two players, but at least those players were very much Amorim's players.
Well, Jules, we asked you to give us your 11 to see how Man United could line up with Mbeumo. Walk us through it.
Yeah, so this season, and we've done this before with Arsenal when the signs would be Mendy, with Liverpool when they signed Wirtz. But those were straightforward. This one is not straightforward, because, as I said, the number 9 is the priority. So right now we've put Cunha as your number 9. It's fine, he can play there, but we all know that he's better as a second striker, one of the two inside 10 positions. So imagine that United, who've really looked for the lab, Gyökeres, now Ekitike, and are going to miss out on Ekitike as well as the other two. They've missed already. And we look at Nicolas Jackson and other number 9s, because they need somebody else there more than Højlund and Zirkzee. But for now, Cunha as a 9. The two 10s, Ahmad and Mbeumo. But again, Cunha will play instead of Ahmad if they sign a number 9. And then that means Bruno Fernandes is a bit deeper, next to Casemiro or Ugarte. The problem with Ugarte, he can't pass the ball, we know that. So you need Bruno there, because you need a really good passer of the ball in that position. But again, they might sign somebody else, and then Bruno can play higher up. Two wing-backs, Dorgu, Mazraoui, could be Dalot as well. And then I think that back 3 is pretty much settled once Lisandro is back from injury with Yoro and De Ligt. And again, we put Onana in goal. It's quite unlikely that he's not going to start the season because he's injured anyway. But it's also likely that United are going to sign another goalkeeper.
I mean, it's saying something when you sign Ugarte and Jules is saying he can't pass the ball when they spent on him 60 million or whatever it was. I look at that United side and I just see problems and more problems again.
Yeah.
The middle of the park, Bruno Fernandes is a good footballer, but he's not a central midfielder. And Casemiro had a little resurgence last year in terms of his form and his fitness and all that. But we know Mother Nature is catching up with him, and the likelihood is he's going to struggle to get around this season. And that's before you even get to the back 3 and the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
So you can spend, 130, 140 million now. You may have to go out and spend another, if they have it, another 70 or 80 on a striker if they can find one. And yet we could still sit here and look at that side and go, problems. Problems in the middle of the park, still. Problems at the back, still. And arguably, the problem still in goal. So, yeah, there's nothing there about this United summer that says to me things are going to turn around in a dramatic kind of way. I just look at it and think we're going to be sitting here next year or next season, week in, week out, probably having some of the same discussions that we had for much of last season. And that's That's frustrating.
It's the most unconvincing Manchester United I think we've discussed in a pre-season. Now, Manchester United has under-delivered and disappointed season in and season out over the last few years. But somehow every pre-season there's a way to kind of spin things, and at least Manchester United fans have hope. But looking at that starting 11, again, it's unconvincing. Lisandro Martinez, who you could argue is probably their best defender, always injured, or injured far too often. De Ligt, far too inconsistent in my opinion. Leniero is young and still learning his trade. We've discussed Onana, whether he's the starting goalkeeper, as Jules said, come August or not. We'll see who fills that void if not. Casemiro, incredible footballer, but his sell-by date is now gone, and sadly so. And then, for all our criticism, for all the money that's spent and all our criticism around Manchester United's front three, Jules is suggesting that Nico Jackson is the solution to that. Now, if Nico Jackson is the solution to your front three issues, it speaks to how deep those issues actually are. So, again, sitting in a pre-season, looking at the Manchester United starting 11, it's really difficult to spin in seeing this team as being at all competitive.
Looking at that team, where do you see it finishing next season?
Somewhere around it finished this season, I'll be honest with you. If that team finishes higher than 10th, I'll be surprised.
7th or 8th at best, I think, because you look at the others. You look at the real big boys, and they're all improving, so they will be up there, including Villa and Newcastle. And then you look at the likes of Brighton, who are a better side in terms of an all-round team than Manchester United. And Thomas Frank getting in at Tottenham should give them a little bit more structure. Should do. So it's, yeah, I mean, mid-table to 7th or 8th, I think that's kind of where that team are. And is that what United are aiming for? The big question is, is this because it's such a mess behind the scenes? Because Ineos to me are taking a lot of convincing that they actually know what they're doing. Apart from giving the Glazers a barrel load of money to take the heat off them a little bit in terms of the football operations, I really don't see what else. They've put a few people in place. Barada and Brailsford was there, and Jason Wilcox, and Dan Ashworth. That was a shambles. But I think they realised they made a mistake. I think that's my reading of it. But who are they competing with? This was a team that has always competed. When it had rough spells, it came back. And it came back stronger. And it bought the best players. It chased the best players. It paid the best players. And it coaxed them to come to the club. They are not doing that now. They're bringing in, these players are good players. But they've already wasted millions on players that are not good enough. And I know we'll get to the fact that there's people training at 5 p.m, people on huge money. So I just don't see what the end game is here for United, for Ineos, for Ruben Amorim, in terms of what they're trying to achieve. Because, 6 months, 12 months ago, the message was, well, we're trying to sign younger players. Chelsea are doing it. That's the way United want to go, but then there's been mixed messages with some of the other players they're bringing in, so it goes away from the sort of youngster approach. So I really don't know what their end game is or how they're going to go about it, but what I can tell you, they are not going to be a threat to the top 4 or 5, not by a long shot.
All right, Jules, Shaka brought up Nicolas Jackson at Chelsea. There was something we were talking about before the show because rumours were suggesting that Manchester United are monitoring him. What's the likelihood of that happening, or what's the story there?
Yeah, you're right, Alex. I think monitoring is the right word to put it. They, as I said before, they've looked and tried to sign many number 9s already this summer. Each one of them just going somewhere else or not wanting to go to Manchester United. The latest one, and I guess unless Ekitike signs for Liverpool or another club, United are still in it because he would still be on the market, but he prefers to go to Liverpool than to go to Manchester United. And again, I'm not sure if Manchester United can pay right now 80 or 90 million euros for a player like him, but that's another story. So they have to look somewhere else for number 9, and they know Nico Jackson is obviously on the market. He's not going to stay at Chelsea, really. There's no room for him there with, Joao Pedro and the Lab signing for the club. And okay, those stats are not too bad, to be fair, in a team that for a long time was just finding his feet. He's not the best number 9 in the world, for sure. I think he's got qualities to do well for United, though. Certainly something that they need in the way Amorim plays. He needs to run the channel. They need somebody aggressive like him. I'm not saying that he's the solution or the answer, but he's certainly better suited and fitted to what Amorim wants to do in that system with the 2 inside 10s and the number 9 in front of them. It would cost you around £40 million, maybe slightly a bit more. But what's for sure, guys, is that there's no room for Haaland anymore and for Zirkzee. So unless you put Cunha there, which is okay, but again, not his best position, you need another number 9. Chidobe Martin is a great talent, but still too young, and he will be in the first team squad. But really, as a number 3, shows behind Cunha and whoever they sign as a number 9. I'm just saying that they're seeing Nico Jackson as a potential interesting signing.
But you want somebody to run the channels. Rasmus Højlund would do that. I mean, one of his qualities as a youngster, very raw, is he'll run the channels, he'll fight with defenders, he'll work hard. If that's the criteria, then...
His confidence has taken a hell of a knock.
No, look, I don't think Rasmus Højlund is good enough for Manchester United. I think he's a youngster, he's raw, and I think he's good enough for Man United, to be honest, at the moment, because they're not very good. But he's not good enough to take them to a level that they really should be aspiring to. But if the criteria is for Ruben Amorim wants somebody to run and jump and fight, then that's actually what Rasmus Højlund was pretty good at. I think he needs somebody who's just an all-round better player. Now, you could argue Nico Jackson is a bit more rounded with more experience than Rasmus Højlund. But if that's where United are going now because there's nobody else and throwing bad money after bad money, what's the point in that? What's the point in going, right, we need a striker and we can't get him and he's going to Newcastle, he's going to Liverpool, I tell you what, we'll bring this guy in. Here's another 40 million. It's throwing bad money after bad money at players that really are not good enough. I mean, Nicolas Jackson's not good enough to take Manchester United to the next level. If I was a season ticket holder, I'd be setting it on fire. I mean, seriously. I mean, absolutely. With all respect in the world to these players, this is Manchester United Football Club should be aiming to be amongst the elite in Europe. And where they're fishing at the moment and where they're throwing money at, it just seems to me that it's gone from one bad to another. You know, we look at Antony, and then there's a list of players that they've paid millions for that are just head scratchers. And this kind of deal for me would add to that. And that's just bonkers in terms of recruitment, in my opinion.
Well, Jules, you mentioned the fact that you don't think Manchester United would have enough money to go after the big name strikers as well, but they do have a lot of players that need letting go. Word is there's a 5 list of unwanted players. Just look at some of the names right there. Antony, who Craig just mentioned, Alejandro Garnacho, which still leaves me scratching my head, Tyrell Malacia, Marcus Rashford, who we know is definitely still on a pretty penny, and Jadon Sancho, where it just has gone from bad to worse for him at Manchester United. So what's it looking like for these players?
It's not looking great, Alexis, because they have been banned from turning up at the training ground in the daytime. Basically, they can only go there after 5 p.m. to train on their own. I mean, they would have coaches with them and fitness coaches, but on their own without the rest of the first team squad, which is fine. A lot of clubs do that. A lot of clubs have players that they want to let go. I understand that. It's just not a good look when you get to the point that you so badly want those players out that you're actually banning them technically from your training ground while people are there. This is what it means. And I don't think it's a good look for a club like that. I don't think it's a good look for Ruben Amorim either. It means that your relationship with those players has been so bad that you can't even bear having them in your first team squad. Don't tell me that those 5 can't do rondos and a few drills at training or run because you are in pre-season and you do a lot of running with the ball and without the ball. And yet he doesn't want them near him and near that first team squad. So this is the way it is. And again, loads of clubs, not just United, loads of even top clubs in Europe have sometimes systems like this to keep those players fit until they find another club. We understand that. I still don't think it's a good look for United or any other clubs doing that kind of stuff.
I mean, these stories are the reason we're talking about Manchester United, aren't they? Because, let's be honest, Manchester United have always been a a talking point. They've always been a big club in cup competitions, in particular for networks, for viewers. They've got a big draw. All of that sort of stuff. People have always wanted a piece of Manchester United in a certain slot because they've always pulled interest, clicks, viewership, and I get that. And in some sense, we're talking about them because they still are. But in terms of a team, in terms of a club going forward, in terms of what we're going to see on the park, they're barely worth talking about. They really are barely worth talking about here. Now, the issues that they have are why we discuss Sancho and Rashford and all these kind of things. My bigger question would be, bearing in mind, up until right to the end of the season, or even to the end of the season, Ruben Amorim had only beaten in the Premier League in the second half of the season teams that were going to be relegated to the Championship. What point, if at all, if United splutter at the start of this season, is he on his high horse back to Portugal? Because there can't be a continuation of last year's league form. They cannot. And he can splutter on all he wants about systems and about getting my players and doing it. I did it this way at Sporting Lisbon and it was successful. Not one Man United fan gives a toss about what he did at Sporting Lisbon because it doesn't affect what happens at Manchester United. And the big question is going to be, with that sort of 11 that Gill's put up, and that could alter depending what happens in pre-season, how much does Ruben Amorim need to figure out how to get results at this club before Ineos empty him? I think that is going to be the big question. Does the leper have to change his spots to get results? Last year would suggest no, he's not going to do it. And then you've got to ask the question, has he got enough? And is he going to get enough in this transfer window to be able to play this back three in the way that he plays and have success? Because a lot of teams in the Premier League outplayed and took them apart last year. And, you know, Ruben Amorim could be a manager very early on in this season that's on some real rocky ground.
I think the other aspect to this in questioning Ineos' role throughout is certainly a financial one. And what does that injection of cash kind of look like? Because a couple of years ago, we were talking about Manchester United, despite the club size, having issues with profit and sustainability. Now, all of a sudden, already, and while we were sitting, mid-July, there's still 6 weeks left, roughly, in this transfer window, they've already spent over 100 million on a couple of players. We're talking about a new goalkeeper, talking about still needing a number 9. And while you have quite a healthy list of talent to sell, the closer we get to that end of August, the more clubs recognise that Manchester United are desperate to sell. Not just to get rid of players that they don't want, but quite possibly to balance those books. And Jules may very well know better than me as to Manchester United's current financial position. So it really is a game of chicken in the transfer market that Manchester United find themselves playing. And it just, again, questions. Again, it raises the issue of back in Nadia, and while we could talk about exactly how good Manchester United were as a football team back in when we were playing, there was no question that they were also one of the best run football clubs in world football. And again, how this club is being run, you question that just as much as how it's performing on the park.
How can then Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I think this was a statement that he made, sort of a kind of bold statement a few months ago, said in 18 months or whatever time period, this club will run out of money.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And yet, okay, Rashford and all that, they were not his, he inherited a lot of it, but they're going out and spending 100-odd million already. They've already let the tea lady go and all these people behind the scenes. It must be galling for those people that were made redundant to see all these players on hundreds of thousands that train at 5 p.m. at night. And then you make statements about a club running out of money, and yet you're able to go out and spend this kind of money on players that are not very good. So the two things, and I know you've got to balance books with business and all that sort of stuff behind the scenes, and generally for a lot of companies there's a natural waste and you try and thin that out to make sure you're as efficient as possible. But to sit there and say, we need to make these decisions and we need to take Sir Alex off the books and we need to take, and I'm sure he's not bothered because he's a very rich individual, and rightly so with the work he did. But then all these other people that have been let go, quite a lot of them, and there may be more, to sit and hear them talking about running out of money whilst wasting money and then spending it big on players. It just, at this moment in time, for me, and I've not changed my stance on this, Ineos, whilst the Glazers run the club on debt and took a lot of money out, whilst Ineos have poured money in to have a minority shareholding in the group, in the company, which doesn't seem great business, there is nothing saying to me at the moment, apart from the fact that Ineos are really good business people and have made billions from the business they're in, that they have a Scooby-Doo what they're doing running a football club the size of Man United.
Well, I tell you what, I started out the show by saying it's a good day to be Manchester United, but let me tell you, reality came crashing down on me just now. So